Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this morning's T3 session on upgrading API Connect. So from the Herzog Labs today, we have Ashley Earle from the test team, and he will be taking you through some charts on how this process actually works. So like we have been doing for the last 2 weeks, we'll arrange for logical times to ask questions, and as well we'll be monitoring the chat to answer as folks are able to. So without further ado, Ash, please do take the floor.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, as Mike says, this is a presentation about upgrade. Specifically, we'll be looking at how you can upgrade from API Management version 4 to API Connect. We'll be looking at how we upgrade the management appliances, differences in data power firmwares that you'll need to consider as well. I'll look at the portal appliance. We'll look at how you can monitor the upgrades, check on its progress, watch the logs as things are going on and make sure things are still working. Once all of the upgrades finished, I'll run through things that you can look for to make sure that things have upgraded as they should. So some post-upgrade checks that you might want to carry out. And then I'll finish on a section for if things don't go quite as expected, how you might be able to sort of debug the problems and hopefully correct any issues or involve support as required. So before I get started on the actual mechanics of upgrade, I wanted to just call out a couple of notes. Firstly, the invite for this presentation was labelled migration, which is a common thing. The dev team tend to call the upgrade process migration, which is a bit of a misnomer really, because migration is something else. So upgrade is how you would upgrade you would take API management and convert it into API Connect. You'd move from version 4 to version 5, or later on from version 5 to a fix pack on version 5 or something else. So that's upgrade. Migration is, as I say, a word that the dev team often use, and it's used because under the covers, part of the process of upgrading is a data migration. So taking the data that's in the database and transforming it in some way. But that's not an externally visible process. It's under the covers. So the right word to use is really upgrade.
Hey, Ash, sorry to interrupt you here. You're coming in a bit muffled, garbled. I don't know if you're on a remote remote headset or not, but just want to let you know that I'm getting that feedback from the conference here.
You're getting feedback?
Not feedback, but the feedback I'm getting from the folks on the conference line. You're saying you're coming in a bit garbled. I don't know if you're on a remote headset or not.
No, I'm using a conference phone.
Okay.
It might not be a very good one.
I could try using the handset instead. Is that any better?
Actually, that's worse.
That's worse. Brilliant.
Perhaps just go back to where you were. We'll just, I think we're go back to what you were, and we'll just carry on, I guess.
Okay. So can you still hear me?
No.
Worse.
Yeah.
That's even worse. Shall I try dialing in again? Maybe that might help.
Yeah. Once you try that. Sorry, everybody. Yep. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, so Ash, when you come back on, just hit *1 and you'll be able to.
Okay, I'm back again. Is that any better?
That's actually, yes, it is.
Okay.
Thanks, Ash. Please do carry on.
Yep, no problem. So the other thing I wanted to call out was that when we shipped API Connect v5 a couple of weeks ago, we only shipped the OVA files because the upgrade piece wasn't yet finished. So we did not ship the vcrypt file that you would use to upgrade the management node, and we also didn't ship the .bin file that you would use to upgrade the Advanced Developer Portal. Both of those will be shipped with the 5001 fix pack, which is coming out imminently. So now we'll move on to how you actually do the upgrade. So looking first at the management appliance, which is probably the bigger piece. When you apply an upgrade to the management appliance, there's essentially two parts. The first part is we apply a new level of software to the appliance. So we'll update database levels, we'll put new versions of Java on there, new versions of Node.js, things like that. And we'll also install the latest version of the API management, or in this case, the API Connect code. And then after we've done all of that, we'll migrate the database data, so the APIs and the plans and the environments and all that sort of stuff, to transform it from the version 4 format into the version 5 format. So typically, the harder bit, the bit that's more likely to have problems, is that data migration. And that's just because we can do a lot of testing in the lab with data that we've made ourselves, or in some cases we have access to customer data, but there's just so much different data out there that there'll be something that may trip us up that we haven't quite caught. So for that reason, I would highly recommend testing out an upgrade on a kind of test stack first. So take a backup from your main stack, store all the data somewhere, put that backup into a standalone management appliance, sort of play it back in, and then try the upgrade in isolation in a test system first, and make sure it upgrades cleanly. Because as I say, there may be some little piece of data in your data that just tripped us up in some way, and it's always worth not hitting that on your production system. So when you do come to upgrade, you'll need the vcrypt file for the management node. You will need to put that file somewhere that the management node can get access to it, so an FTP server or a HTTP server. And obviously you'll need a management node or multiple management nodes that you want to upgrade. Before you do the upgrade, you absolutely should take a backup of the stack, because you cannot roll back upgrades. We don't support downgrade again if you decide that you want to undo what you've just upgraded to. And should something go wrong with the upgrade, you're going to want to get back to a working system again, so you need the backup. You will probably want to back up both the management and the portal appliances, because again, the portal appliances, they have their own upgrade process, and should something go wrong there, you'd want to be able to get your portals back to a working state. So absolutely take a backup before you even consider doing any upgrade. Just a quick note on downtime as well. So while the management nodes are upgrading, the CMC and API Manager UIs will be unavailable for a period of time. In theory, the API runtime traffic, so the gateway side, the invocations of APIs, that should carry on running, because the gateway appliances have a cache of the API data. They can keep running without the management nodes at all. But later on in the upgrade process, you have to kind of refresh the gateways with the latest code as well, so there's potential for some disruption there. But not as much disruption as there is on the management node, where there are complete outages of both of the UIs while the data migration piece of the upgrade happens. So something to consider there as well. The actual procedure, so once you've got your vcrypt file on your FTP server or your HTTP server or wherever you've chosen to host it, you log onto the management appliance at the CLI and issue the system upgrade command. This has changed slightly recently. We've changed it to be system upgrade firmware, where it used to say system upgrade CIOS image. So the syntax has changed slightly, but it's the same command otherwise. So you run this command on each appliance one by one, and once an appliance has run through the upgrade, it will stay down until you've gone through all of the appliances and upgraded everything that was in the cluster. At that point, the final appliance that you upgraded will run the data migration, and then all of the other appliances will just clone the migrated data from the primary appliance. So only one of the appliances does the data migration, and it's the last one that you upgrade that will do that. So I've borrowed a diagram from our knowledge center here just to illustrate what happens. So in the top row, we've got 3 management nodes and 3 data power appliances, and we're imagining that we're starting at version 4041, which is the latest version 4. And one by one, we go through the management nodes and apply our API-C, so our API Connect upgrade. So that's illustrated by the RSS nodes turn purple because it's now at API Connect. But at that point, that node is still down, and it will remain down until the primary has also been upgraded. So once the primaries have the upgrade applied to it, it will run the data migration, and then the secondary and any additional management servers will sort of talk back to the primary, and then they'll all come back up again. And again, just a note that says, while this is happening, the data power appliances are up and online and should be serving API traffic in exactly the way that they always do. So once you've upgraded the management appliances, we then have to look at the data power appliances, because for API Connect, we require specific levels of data power firmware to support all of the new features that have gone into API Connect. So as part of the upgrade, you're going to have to either upgrade the data power appliances to 7.2.05 or 7.5, or replace the old appliances with new appliances at this updated firmware level. So again, I've got my little diagram just to show what's happening. So we have a situation where we've got 3 data power appliances. So what we can do is we can take one out, upgrade it to the latest firmware level, put it back in, and do the same with the other 2. So again, in theory, we're preventing there being a complete outage of API runtime traffic while we're doing the upgrade. And then that leaves us with the portal appliance. So for API Connect, there is no basic developer portal anymore. So the management node no longer has a portal built into it, which means if you were only using basic developer portals in API management, when you bring up API Connect, when you upgrade, you're now going to have to deploy advanced portal, or what we used to call advanced portal, we're now just calling it the developer portal. You're going to have to deploy some new developer portal nodes. So in the case where you didn't have an existing portal, you just deploy a new node and integrate it into API management as described in the Knowledge Center. If you did have advanced portal nodes already, you can upgrade them to the latest portal appliance, and that's described on this page. So again, this is all documented in the Knowledge Center. For version 5 for API Connect, these pages aren't there yet because we didn't ship this when we shipped in GA. So these will, the version 5 versions of this procedure will come once we've shipped the fix pack. But for now, the version 4 process is probably very similar to what the version 5 process is anyway. And for the portal appliances, it's a case of downloading the fix pack, uploading it to each of the portal appliances, and then SSHing into each appliance in turn and running the bash upgrade script. that's how you upgrade. How do you know that it's working? Is the next section. So for the management appliances, there are a couple of log files that you can get access to. So on the, you will have started an SSH session, you'll have kicked off the system update command. If you start a second SSH session, you can tail a number of log files on the appliance, and you'll be able to see kind of text streaming past as the update runs. The two log files that are useful in this case are cmc.out, which is kind of the main log file for the management appliance, and for API Connect we've created a specific log file to store all of the log information for the actual migration logic, because there's quite a lot of output because there are so many changes between API management and API Connect. It makes sense to pull all that out into a log file that we can keep everything separate from cmc.out. If you want to just grab all of the logs from the appliance, there's a debug command that will let you just grab everything and sort of download a zip file that you can look at. Should you need to raise PMRs, this is the same process for getting all the logs off of the appliance that you'd use to do that anyway. And this is a kind of example of the sort of things you'll see in the migration log. It's not massively readable, but it's very useful for our developers, so they can see what was migrated how. So there are things in here, the kind of section headers that tell you what it's migrating, and then various bits and pieces around. You know, it's making a new assembly, it's moving this API and changing it, modifying it in this way. So those two log files, cmc.out and migration.log, are also where you would look to see that the migration part of the upgrade is finished. You'd see a message similar to the example there. And you can also check that everything's back up and running again from the CLI using the system show status command. Specifically the runtime level, that will be down while the migration is still running. And once all that's completed, it will show up again, and at that point the CMC UI should be available again as well. So that was the management nodes. The data power nodes, as you're upgrading them, you have to remove them from CMC and add them back into CMC. The kind of the status of how that's going is in the CMC UI. You could also monitor cmc.out, the same log file as for the management node upgrade, but it's probably easier to just look at what's happening in the CMC UI, and you can see the add and the remove happening in there. And then for the developer portal, there are a number of log files that you can watch, but the command that you run on the dev portal is itself quite specific in telling you which bits it's on and what progress it's making. But should you want to look in more detail, there are a number of log files that you can follow in there as well. And you know that the dev portal's finished upgrading because it prints out a little message at the end and says, you know, I've finished, the sites have all upgraded successfully. So once everything's finished, once all the logs have said, yeah, I'm done, how do you know that things are good, things are in a good state? So the first place to check is that your management appliances should all have the CMC UI. You should be able to log into the CMC UI in all of the appliances. And once you're in there, if you look at the status for each of the management appliances that you have, they should all be showing with active in green text. Similarly, the gateway appliances in CMC should also be showing active and everything green and everything looking good. And the gateway appliances need to be in sync with the management appliance, and that means that they've got the correct API Connect configuration level running on them. So that's when you add a gateway appliance into CMC, the management node pushes configuration to that gateway, and we also store a kind of timestamp of the version that we've pushed. and if before you've upgraded the gateway successfully, the configuration version will still say APIM 404, and after the upgrades worked correctly, if you look for this version, it should say version 5, and then the version string that matches with version 5. Then you would want to check that the API Manager UI is working correctly. For API Connect, we've moved this UI. It used to be /API Manager. It's now moved to just /APIM. So again, this UI should be up and running on all of the management nodes, and you should be able to log in using all your usual IDs. Once you get in there, you should find that your version 4 data has been converted into version 5 data. So that will be things like your APIs have been converted into Swagger 2 format. The assemblies that you defined in version 4 have now become an assembly flow with all the various policies attached to it. If you had OAuth secured APIs, the OAuth, the way that OAuth is defined in API Connect has changed quite considerably, so you'll now have a specific OAuth API provider API for each of your OAuth secured APIs. Plans have gone away, they're now products. Environments are now catalogs. User roles haven't changed, they should still work the same way. Any subscriptions that you had to your plans should have been converted into product subscriptions, and anything that was already published, so any of your APIs that were in published plans, should still be in, but now under published products instead. And then finally, for the developer portal, again, all the appliances should be online. You should be able to access them via your web browser. Your portal sites should be working. They should not be reporting any errors. There's a new feature in there called background sync, and that if that's not working correctly, there is an error message printed in the portal site. So that's something to look for. The content of the portal should match with everything that was published in the APIM UI. And then this is a good point as well to test that the APIs that have been published are still invocable. So if you go into the portal, you can use the test tool, and you can make sure that all the APIs that you expect to be able to invoke are still working as they should. Okay, and now when things don't quite go quite right, so for the management appliance, the most likely problem to happen is that there is some sort of error in the data migration logic caused, as I said earlier, by, there's just so much data out there. There might be a particular field that's not being set quite right, or something not in quite the format that we expected. If that happens, you'll typically find that the runtime, when you do system show status, the runtime shows as down, and however long you wait, it always says down. If that's the case, check in varlog migration.log, check in cmc.out, look for any errors in either of those. They're usually quite obvious if there's something's gone wrong. There's also some additional logs, arbd log, arbd standard out, and arbd standard error. Occasionally you'll get errors in there as well. If there are errors in any of these files, then that's probably going to have to be investigated via a PMR. And while that's being processed by the usual support channels, you should restore a version 4 stack using the backup that you took before you did any upgrades to kind of get yourself back up and running again, while we investigate the reason for the migration not working. Another thing that might not quite work is sometimes the primary comes up fine, but the additional management servers don't always recluster correctly. Again, the arbd logs are quite useful in this case. Sometimes the Informix logs are useful, and sometimes the Elasticsearch logs have issues. Again, in this case, gather the logs from the management appliances, open a PMR, in the meantime, to kind of work around it, because you've got a primary management server up and running that's working fine, you can clean the other appliances, so run system clean API config to kind of wipe them out, reinitialize them, and then you can go back into CMC and recluster them with the primary, and in theory they should join back in fine at that point. Alternatively, you've got a working primary, you could just deploy a set of new OVA files for new secondary appliances and join them into the primary again that way. Gateway appliance debugging, so typically the issue here might be that the API calls aren't working as they should. Here there are a few things you might want to check, so are things published as you expect them to be published? Are the APIs where they should be? Are the plan subscriptions correct? An issue that we see is that sometimes people forget that they have to remove the gateway appliances and re-add them after doing an update to refresh the configuration. So double check that the gateways have got the right configuration on them. For API Connect, as I said earlier, it's important that we're running the right gateway firmware, so the right data power firmware. So check that you've got 7205 or 75. Again, CMC that out is a useful log to check. There might be errors in there, and if all that fails, then the data power logs can be quite useful as well. So if you invoke an API and then look in the syslog, or enable, there's an extra level of debug log that you can enable by setting up a log target for API Connect. That often has useful information in it as well. If you do all that and can't get to the bottom of it, then all of the log files that you've collected are very useful. Attach them to a PMR and the support team will investigate. And then lastly, the portal appliance. There's a few useful logs there to check if things haven't quite worked. And again, a kind of collect all the logs together command that you can run, generate logs, will just zip everything up and give you a file that you can download off the appliance. And that was the end of my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Ash. So we got a couple of questions here from the chat. We'll hit those first. How long do you think it would take to migrate a minimal V4 installation, to Gateway 2 management and 3 portals using the process described here?
I think you should plan it taking at least a day, because there are a lot of kind of moving parts. There's a lot of manual do this, do this, do this. The bit that takes longest is the data migration on the management node usually, and that's a question of how much data do you have. If you have a system that's got lots of stuff in it, it's going to take longer to migrate. That portion on its own can take sort of half an hour usually. And then the portal side as well, the kind of the migration of the upgrading of the sites can take 6 or 7 minutes per site, so you need to be aware of that as well. But assuming it will take, a half a day, something like that.
Okay. When you do the migration process, does it take over custom policies?
It does take, custom policies will be migrated across as part of the migration of the assembly structures.
Okay, and portal customizations too?
Yeah, portal customizations should be migrated across as well, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So is analytics data migrated?
Yes, analytics data will also be migrated.
Okay. Oh yeah, so let's just say that I have mapping set up inside of an API and resource, from version 4. How does that get translated in when it's migrated to version 5 with the new assembly process?
Yeah, so in version 5 there's a mapping policy. So your API mappings from version 4 you'll get one of these mapping or multiple of these mapping policies in your assembly flow. and the data will be mapped. It's the same sort of kind of drag a line idea that was in version 4. That will all be pre-populated for you in API Connect. So, yep, the mappings should all be exactly as they were in version 4, in version 5 after you've done the migration.
Okay. Another question here. So it was mentioned that plans have gone away. Well, not gone away, but they've now actually are a subcomponent of a product. So
Yep.
plans that are actually created in version, so if you have a plan in version 4, will that automatically be set up as a product and then a plan with it, or the same name of the plan inside of that product once the migration is complete?
Yeah, so you'll get for each plan that you had, you'll get a product with the same name as the plan, and that product will have in it just one plan that I think is just called default plan. So the plan becomes a product with a single default plan in it.
Okay. All right. And then I guess an interesting question here is that on the Bluemix side, I guess this will all just be managed by us, right? Because I understand from Matt Roberts that the V5 stack on Bluemix SaaS is separate than V4. So how is migration going to happen there?
So yeah, that's right. So for V5 Bluemix is a separate stack to V4 Bluemix, and migration will be something that we do later. I'm not sure we yet know what the full story is around it, but it'll be something like we'll migrate customers on a per customer basis across from version 4 to the version 5 stack. I think the details have still got to be worked out on it.
Okay. All right, great. And last question before I turn over to the room is, do we have a general statement on whether or not snapshots are supported with the management VM? My experience is no, but I just wanted to kind of get your take on it.
I'm not aware that there's a statement or a document anywhere that says what's supported or what isn't in that area.
Okay. All right. I'll see if I can follow up with that one and see if I can get maybe something from Lane or something, and I'll follow up with the community on that. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Any questions from the call? So hit star 1 to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Callum. I have a quick question, if possible. When you were walking through, Ashley, the various different process, it did feel as if there was opportunity, shall we say, for issues to arise, shall we say. And I guess I was just trying to look from a production system and kind of going through this process on a production system. There does seem to be significant risk that we could experience some significant downtime, shall we say. Now, I was just wondering if another approach would be kind of similar to this, but actually almost build out another parallel stack on version 5 and take the data across to that, and potentially be able to then validate that, et cetera, and then switch it over potentially at the load balancer level once we gain more confidence, and if needed, we could then switch back over at the load balancer level if we had any problems during that switchover. I was just wondering if there was any thoughts on that.
I think if you talk to Matt Roberts, that sounds very similar to what they do with the production SaaS cloud. Rather than kind of destroying or kind of migrating everything in place, I think they bring up nodes at the new level and kind of integrate them into the existing stack. I don't know the exact details of it, but it kind of sounds similar to that.
Okay, because I was just thinking
that's a good approach, actually, and it's one that a couple of customers are contemplating. And the options really for getting the stuff across are, either with your V4 sort of sitting there running alongside your brand new V5, you can go as far as extracting Swagger definitions from V4 and bringing them into V5 and essentially building things up and trying them out, or using a sort of what's the word? Sort of to do the attempted migration on another system and try it out before doing it to the real production one. So you're right that you don't have to do a sort of big bang, on your existing running production as the first step.
Is there any option, Chris, to kind of extract out a backup and then actually bring up a V5 system and then import that backup? I know we'd lose the analytics, but could we do that and save everything else in effect to kind of accelerate that a bit more? Yes,
absolutely. Now, don't try it today, because the reason is, the migration code will run. The migration code that's sort of in the V5 images isn't quite ready yet. Hence, us not releasing the vcrypts. But yes, that's another approach, or will be, when we've got 5001 out there.
Okay. Because I was just conscious of trying to lower the risk, shall we say, as much as possible.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ash? Going once? Okay, I don't see any other questions from the chat either, so thanks everybody. Thank you, Ash, especially for coming on. Before you go, can you actually share so you uploaded your presentation to the library. If you could share it with me, I'll download it and then I'll put it up with the recording.
Okay, yep, I can do that.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, and then I know we have another call immediately after this one, so I'll just keep this meeting up, but I'll actually, you know what? I'm going to end this meeting and start up a new one, because last time I kept the meeting up early this week, we had issues, so you'll need to log back on just to be safe. All right, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you here in a few minutes.